Hi there. Welcome to Late Talks on Air for this Sunday night, June 14th, 2026. I'm your host, Nancy Duffy. Thanks for being here. Okay, so in true Late Talks on Air fashion, we had a technical snafu. My camera overheated. But
No worry.
welcome back to
It's
the
all
program, Bernice. I feel like I know you now.
Yes.
That was this week's guest, Bernice McDonald, who just embraced my technical snafus. I think my guests have come to almost accept them, but one day in the future, I will kick off these episodes without any such snafus. It'll be smooth as ice, but probably not for the foreseeable future. Tonight, we're exploring courage, ingenuity, re-envisioning our possibilities as we go about life and relationships. And we're doing that with a little help from our guest, Bernice McDonald, as you just previously met, who believes you can do hard things even if the step you take is tiny. Bernice is the author of the Little Books of Courage series and hosts a podcast where she interviews guests, blending storytelling, neuroscience, and soulful reflection to help listeners recognize their strength, befriend fear, and move forward with hope. Welcome to the program. Let's go to our conversation. Bernice McDonald, thank you so much for taking time to join me here on Late Talks on Air. How are you?
I'm great. And thank you for having me, Nancy. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I want to know a little bit about your background, a little bit more about your background. So why don't we start off with, if somebody hadn't met you before, how would you describe yourself?
Well, now it depends what kind of setting I'm in. But if you're talking about my business and what I do, I would say that I work with midlife women and help them to move from that place of not enough into brave enough by learning to take tiny, brave steps.
Uh-huh.
That's pretty much it.
The tiny, brave steps, is it a program? Is it like what's entailed? Because I know you've used that term in your business and whatnot. So what does that entail? Is it a program?
It actually has turned into a methodology.
Yeah.
So, it's a way of approaching fear. Really, it's a way to consider, because so many of us struggle with that whole thing about being not enough, which is the root of all of this. And my philosophy was that we often think that we need to go from not enough to being enough, right? That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, I kind of found that it was better to lower the bar a little, if you will, and go from not enough to being brave enough. And so out of the whole brave enough concept came the idea of, okay, so how do we become brave enough? And the tiny brave steps formed out of that. Is that it's a learning process and something that we grow, something that we, it's it's not really finding our courage. It's more like building our courage.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that by taking the tiny brave steps.
By actually putting it into action. So you didn't come across this by accident. Many of us, as we grow ourselves, that's how we become teachers. That's how we can pass down these little snippets of wisdom to the people that we meet. So let's go back now, Bernice, to the beginning. When did you have to exercise this to actually formulate what these steps would be to come to that conclusion?
Well, I always think of it as kind of like the time when I grew up, which wasn't until I was like 50, because I went through a divorce at 49. And, I was raised in a home that was really loving. I had no complaints about it. It was a very busy home with 5 kids in a little house, and my dad worked so hard, but we were raised in a church community. And I think out of that church community, I just felt like a bad girl all the time because I was always breaking the rules and I never seemed to be able to be perfect. And I believe that my whole philosophy of being, or my whole idea of not being enough, came out of that background. And so as I grew up, I made choices trying to always be good enough, trying to earn love, trying to um, do the things that were acceptable, trying to not be who I am because I felt like I was never, I was always too much, or not, putting my foot in my mouth, not good enough compared to other people. So I ended up marrying somebody that wasn't exactly the right guy because I really thought he was my last chance. And so we stayed together for 24 years, and then finally the time came when I realized I did not want to spend the rest of my life in that relationship. And so I left. And I would say at that point, I was 49. And it was after that that I really, that whole fire, the 6 years when I was single in between my marriages, really became the testing ground, the training ground for me to move into actually being who I am. And, I learned so much in that time about what it takes to actually, to understand myself, to know who I am, to be okay with who I am, which is probably the biggest part.
What
And
what do you think, Bernice, happened at 49? Like, why 40? Why was that the pivotal moment, do you think?
my kids were leaving home. I have two beautiful daughters. My youngest was graduating. It was a difficult, it was a difficult marital situation.
Yeah.
24 years were tough.
Yeah.
And I really was faced. I had grown so much even all through that, right? And I didn't know some things about my husband that, if I knew now, things might have turned out differently, but I didn't understand about certain personality disorders or that sort of thing. So I really was looking at the situation and deciding, okay, the rest of my life is ahead of me. I
Mhm.
was starting to move into speaking. I had just trained as a coach. I had so much ahead of me that I was hopeful about. But then there was this situation that was really difficult. And I had to make that decision. Do I want to stay here? Can I thrive and grow here where I am? Or do I need to make a difference, a different
Do,
decision?
do you think that was one of your first big acts of bravery? That's not something someone can take or do lightly. It's,
Yeah.
I think divorce is one of the most, well, what do they say? They say divorce, moving, career change. I remember doing it all at the same time.
Yeah. So
And
much.
it really flips you for a loop.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, okay. So 49, you decide to make a change.
Yeah.
You go out on your own. Your children are grown. So you go out on your own. What happens next? How does
I became somebody I didn't even know.
hmm.
Like,
Did your friends stay the same? Did your
no.
like okay, so because that happens a lot too when we pivot and we change and we grow,
Yeah.
and sometimes our own identities change, and
Yes.
even the friendscape change. So let's start with the friends because that has a lot to do with influence and everything like that. So what happened at that point on?
Well,
Let's just start with the friend stage.
yeah, like I raised my kids in a little town. I'm from Grand Prairie, Alberta, but I raised my kids in a little town just, about 20 kilometers out. And so I decided I was leaving. So
Mhm.
I left my community. I left my house. I left my church. I left my friends and acquaintances, everything. I walked away. And none of that followed me. Really, when I look at it,
Mhm.
it was like walking into a different life. Um, you know, the shock of it, the whole, I knew for sure that I needed to make this. move. I knew for sure. There was no doubt in my mind. We had separated a couple of times before that. So this time I knew I needed to change. And I remember even hearing, I went to my sister's house. She lived in Grand Prairie, moved in with her for a little while with my youngest daughter, who was just graduating high school. And I remember my sister told my mom, she seems so much more serious this time. Like there's something different about this. But I think it was because I just knew this was the decision I needed to make for the rest of my life. And so what I did was I actually did not want to live with my sister because I felt like then I was reverting back to being a child again, right? Because my sister and brother-in-law were kind of the oldest in the family and they were, the substitute parents. And I didn't want to be there. So I right away, and it was amazing because the rental situation in Grand Prairie was really difficult at that time. Everything was so expensive. But I found a place and I moved in. And that was like cementing it, right? And I signed a 1-year lease.
That cements it, the 1-year lease. So in Grand Prairie, very chilly part of Canada.
Yes.
Close to Peace River. Is it Peace River, I think?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But a beautiful area. Was this wintertime? Was this summertime? When did this? September. So just before the big winter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you move out on your own.
Yes. And then my daughter, she got married, like she got engaged very young, and he was a wonderful guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been married 20 years now, but she moved in with me, but then she moved out. And then I had to find a way to help pay rent because I didn't have a very high paying job or anything right then. I had to take in roommates. So I was going to the gym, which is one thing I had always wanted to do. I got in the best shape of my life at that, in that year. And I met a couple of nice young guys there who needed a place to live. And so I had 2 guys move into it was like a quarter of a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like a fourplex, I guess it was. And we were on the upper floor of one. So here I was at 50 with roommates, and they were guys who were young in their 20s, and they were nice and they tried very hard, but they were drinkers. And oh my goodness, it was just such an experience that I had never had before. I mean, I honestly became a different person at that time.
Yeah.
So many decisions I had to make on my own, so much of trying to figure out how, who am I now? How do I live this life that I have chosen to live? And it was a tough, the first half of that 6 years, well, probably about 4 years of that were a steep learning curve. Yeah. And I really believe all of my courage training, much of it fell into that category.
So when did things really start to pick up and change for you?
I was training, like I had just gotten my life coach certification before everything fell apart. So that had to be put on hold because I was in no shape to be actually looking for clients. Mm-hmm. So I had access to a lot of other courses as a certified life coach. I could, take other training. So I decided what I was going to do, because obviously I needed the help myself. I was going to take relationship coaching courses. So, one of the best decisions I made, actually, because it kept me occupied, it kept me growing, and I learned so much about what a healthy relationship should look like in that time. And so, I grew so much. I made, the relationship courses I took, they were for singles and they were for couples. And, I wasn't coaching yet. I tried on a couple of things. One of my roommates, I ended up with a girl roommate, and she was, let me test out my coaching on her. But, I made lists of what I wanted in my life. And I think that really started me to really think about who I wanted to be and where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And I made lists and lists of the kind of guy I wanted and the kind of love I wanted to live in. But then the trick thing was here, I needed to decide and to think about, okay, so if that's the relationship I want and that's the man I want, who do I have to be in order to survive in a
So you
relationship
got that.
like that?
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you this then, Bernice. So that's the relationship side, and you're trying to figure out what you want that to look like.
Yeah.
Did on the friendship side and everything else that sometimes makes a life full, was that already settled for you when that by the time you were looking on the relationship side, or was that still building at the same time?
I really didn't have friends at all at
Yeah.
that time. Acquaintances.
Hmm.
Uh, I did end up going to work for Alberta Health Services, which was an excellent job that I accidentally fell into. I mean, really, it was just such um, a good thing that came along to help me support myself. I started to make friends at work a little bit. You know how it is. You have work
Yes.
colleagues. At the gym, people are transient, right? So I think that's probably where the hub of my friends was at this gym, because we all had this thing in common about getting in shape, and a lot of us were single. There was a lot of divorced people there. So you would have conversations in between sets, and the owner himself of that gym, it was a small gym, was a divorced man who was also struggling with a lot of things. And so yeah, it became connections, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't call them real friendships.
Yeah.
It was just a place to go and to be, but you didn't really let anybody know too much about who you are in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just find it so interesting when we're looking to rebuild our lives, and especially if a move is involved.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, how do you get to know people in the community? And, you know, before we move on to like a relationship, is there like what else is existing there? Because I think sometimes when people are looking for these relationships, they can fall into the rut because it's becomes the primary goal. Like not in your case, but I'm saying in general. And we sometimes friends and community and all those other things, those things can help us find who we are too. And I think we've gotten so bad at it. Like
Yeah.
for the same reason that you've just said, the transient thing. Work is transient, like neighbors don't talk to each other. If they do, it's a general wave across the street, that type of thing, you know. And so we don't even know how to formulate those smaller relationships. And then so the bigger ones become much more, there's more riding on them because they're the one, they're the thing. So after years and years of you looking into relationships and doing the coaching behind the scenes and the training and all that stuff, what did you learn?
Well, actually, I did have one goal, and that was to find love again.
Yeah.
That was the thing, because I think what I wanted more than anything was to know what a real love felt like
Hmm.
before I died. And I actually came out of my marriage that way. It was like this was not a real love, that was a thriving love. And so that was one of my goals. So I did a lot of dating. I went on, online. Actually, I met somebody very soon after I was single.
Yeah.
And that did not pan out well because, of course, you're just out of a relationship and then you're attracted to this person who happens to be attracted to you, but that does not necessarily mean it's a good formula.
Hmm.
So, I got more hurt probably through that relationship than I did through anything else. But it was all so much about learning. Um, eventually what happened was, in the middle of everything, I found a new community. I started going to a new church. I started, picking up some friendships there, but I didn't feel comfortable there really. It was just like, you would go places for dinner and you would talk to people, but that's not the real you communicating with the real them. I did find a couple of women friends who were lonely and also looking for somebody. Like, it's so funny because you'd think that's a teenage thing in lots of ways or a 20s thing. But, when you come out of divorce at any age, if you have any desire to find that again, you are right back in that teenage stage, right? And so, the connections I made, and as I grew, I actually finally decided, okay, I'm taking 6 months off, a sabbatical from dating, and I am going to just figure out myself. And so that was a really lonely 6 months because I pretty much cut off a lot of any acquaintances I had, or I didn't do much. But I sat with my journal and I really started to figure out who I am and what I wanted, and put together a lot of the stuff I had learned about relationships. And I started what I call a strengths journal, which was kind of like a book that said, this is the kind of house I want to live in. This is the kind of car I want to have. This is the man I want. And, really started to begin to honor my own desires and what I wanted. So,
how did you
and
feel
then,
how did you feel at that time, Bernice? Did you still at that time when you were learning so much about yourself feel like I'm not enough?
yes, and although, yeah, it's interesting you should say that, because I think through everything, finding out who I am, and it's funny because I actually have just been thinking about this, my past, because the current book I'm writing is, helping women to work through this very process. And when I think back to it, I think what happened when I actually made that decision to divorce my husband, I broke all the rules, like all the rules that told me who I should be in the past. Because I mean, there's a, certain stigma on divorced women in certain circles where, it's like, no, you shouldn't do that. You stay there till death do you part. It doesn't matter. And I was just thinking about that when I broke all the rules. And I always was kind of, that girl, that woman that never felt enough. I can't live in the rules, was a kind of a relief. And I threw all that off, became this person I didn't recognize. And then I had to kind of put myself back together again. So I had to make new rules for myself and decide it's okay if I am this way. It's okay if I, don't like this or don't like that. I started to realize these are my favorite colors, or this is my favorite food I like to eat, or this is what I like to do with my time. And I have this dream of going to Italy, and it's okay to have that dream. Those are the things that began to sort of slip into place and take the place of feeling not enough. And then I began to, like the whole dating thing was a whole test in this, but to become brave enough to be able to say, well, because you get the fear talking to you, what if there's no good men out there anymore? What if they're all like psychopaths and you're going to end up in trouble? But that's where I discovered that courage really comes from actually doing, not from finding the courage before you go and do the thing. It actually comes after the step.
Yeah.
So
That makes
that's what I
sense.
started to see.
That makes sense because if you, and that's where that whole perfectionism mindset can come in, like, oh, I'll do this after I get that, or after, because you keep wanting or thinking you need something to do the next thing. and that courage will come, but that's not courage. Then that's just preparation or something else, right?
Yeah.
The courage is the actual leap, whether you have all the tools you need or all the environment, the ideal situation that you're looking for before you step out. That's so true. Yeah.
Yes. Because the thing is, if you wait for the confidence to come, it will never come because you're afraid to take the step. And you have all of these messages coming at you from fear. And actually that's what I learned. I mean, one of the coaching things that I learned from, researching so much into relationships, the coach said, you're going to be afraid. Fear is going to show up. But what I want you to do is I want you to look that fear right in the eye, and I want you to say to it, go over there in the corner and eat a cookie. I hear you talking and I know you're there, but I need to go ahead and do this anyway.
Different.
That literally changed my life, because I started to realize I'm the boss of my fear. Fear is something that is given to us to protect us, to keep us from falling off a building or off a cliff, whatever we feel inspired to do. That fear mechanism helps us to know when we need to run, but it doesn't know the difference because it's a biological thing in our brain, doesn't know the difference between when we're in real danger and when we are just uncomfortable, when we are afraid we're going to be embarrassed or we're afraid we're going to be humiliated or get hurt again, that the feelings are the same. And so that's the biggest thing that happened for me during that time is I began to discern when the fear really was a risk and when the fear was really me being afraid that something was going to happen that would put me into a hurtful situation again. And I had to take the risk. Then I had to make that decision, and say to my fear, because separating it from me really helped me to say, go over there in the corner and eat a cookie because I need to go on this date.
My fear would be so fat. so many cookies. Good Lord. It'd be in the corner. It'd just be.
Yeah. Maybe that would be a good thing. It couldn't come quickly to you.
So did people notice this change? Did like how noticeable was it? Did they say, Bernice, wow, there's something different about you, or Mom, there's something different about you? Was it gradual? Was it just like, I'm gonna go skydiving today, and that's that, discernment to the wind, literally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
my daughters definitely. I mean, it was a tough thing for them because they
were used to seeing you in a certain light, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Mom who's telling them what to do. And all of a sudden, here she is dating, and my younger daughter who was just getting married herself, it was kind of like, okay, I'm going out on this date. I'm telling you this because, if I need you to phone me, or I need to get out of this date, then, call me at a certain time. And then we have a code word, that was just so weird for her. Like they understood why I needed to leave the marriage. They really did understand that, but it was tough. And that change was a fast change for me to turn into that person who was going after what I wanted. By the time I met my second husband, I think it was almost like the metamorphosis was complete. It was like during that journey, that was probably 5 years into it, I was ready. I was ready because, what happened was I was able to say, okay, I will go out on a date with this guy, but if he doesn't measure up to my standards, if he isn't able to meet my needs, which I know I now need and I need to express and I need to be firm about that, then that's okay. He can go on to the next one and I will go on to the next one. And I really was okay with that. So by the time I met my husband, and actually he rescued me when my car wouldn't start on January 7th. So it was like
In
35.
winter. Yeah. Yeah.
And he couldn't get my car going, but he offered to help and to try with, and his wife had died a year before. And so, that kind of sparked an introduction and we ended up going out from there. And we were just such kindred spirits, and he was exactly the kind of man that I was looking for, the man on my list. And truly he was. But also I was stronger and different inside. And so I think my girls, like the biggest thing in my family, noticed how I was in a relationship that was different from how I was before. So that's probably the biggest change. And it came by growing, by taking those steps.
Stepping out literally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think I just lost my camera. Bear with me, Bernice. Hold on one second.
No worries.
Okay, so in true Late Talks on Air fashion, we had a technical snafu. My camera overheated, and so it doesn't auto shut off. And I forgot there's like a fan that you can hook onto the back of your camera that kind of cools it down. And I should have had that all set up in advance. Sorry about that, Bernice. I apologize.
Oh,
but
no worries.
Welcome back to the program, Bernice. I feel like I know you now.
Yes.
People are going to think my technical snafus are just a way of getting to know my guests, and they would be right. No.
And why not? It's a good way to go.
The camera, Bernice, tell everyone, the camera truly did go black, right? Like,
yes, it did. And suddenly I was there all by myself. And it's like, whoa, this is too much.
And then we had to take a new step of courage. So,
yeah.
And here we are. Okay, so where did we leave off, Bernice? We basically left off where you had made this list and you grew into the person that you were wanting to be, where you had things that you were looking for in a relationship, but also that I presume that you would have had to grow yourself as well, like through that process, by accessing and acting those little bouts of courage that you now call these steps, right? So so let's presume, so you've met your current husband.
Yeah.
When did you start putting together this program?
That was a few years in. I always wanted to coach, but because, my divorce kind of interrupted that process. And I did go start coaching women who were going through divorce and having relationship issues. And I was doing that. I actually opened up my own coaching office just before I met my husband. And then, while I was married to him in the first year, I decided that wasn't really working for me. It was a part-time thing. I was coaching women in relationships, but it just didn't feel right. And so I continued to work because I just needed the income, and it was a good job, teaching me. It was actually an addiction and mental health. So I was learning a lot that went alongside my coaching, So when I got to the place where I was ready to leave that job and give coaching a full go, the world had changed. And coaching, it just wasn't that easy to find clients, so it was then that I decided that I was going to do something that would be really different. I decided I want to talk about fear. I tried doing business coaching, but it just wasn't my thing. And so then I remember when I was in this one course and I said, really down deep, what I want to do is talk to women about courage. I want to help women to be, to find the courageous person inside of them and to get out there and do what they're meant to do. And somebody said to me, why wouldn't that just be a business? Like, that is something that is so needed. And so right there, I kind of just made the decision, okay, I'm going to pursue that. But then I thought, how am I going to get clients? Like, it just seemed like it was a difficult thing to advertise. So I decided, I'm going to write 10 little books of courage, all of them about one. Each book will be about one fear blocker.
Had you written before? Had you written anything before?
No, I hadn't.
Okay, so this takes courage. Why did you decide? Why did you decide on 10 stories of courage?
I was listening to Benjamin Hardy, who was talking about 10xing your work. And I thought, wow, that is such a big vision. And I'm all about courage. I'm all about learning to, start moving toward the goal in order to be able to accomplish the goal. And so I thought, this is going to be my big audacious goal. I am going to write 10 books. So that's why I set that goal. And actually, I wrote 3 and they're just small books. They're not big books. They're not, number 1 bestsellers or anything, but I think they're heart-to-heart books. And I did end up writing 3 within about 8 months. So to me, I think that was pretty good. The only thing is I kind of did things backwards, because I had such a desire to begin to teach. And they all start with the words brave enough too. And but then I realized I began to work with a coach, and she said, I think you need to write a signature book with your entire process in it. And I had, while writing my other books, begun to develop the process and the pathway to courage. I call it a courage framework. And she said, I think you need to put that into a book and have your Brave Enough books fit underneath the umbrella of that book. So, and along with that, I began to offer group settings for women to come in, and I called them creative spaces. The first one, free, come in, bring a project, and let's talk about courage. And so we have a little introductory time. We talk about being brave. We talk about what it takes, about how everybody has their purpose, that they have something to accomplish. And so many things will get in the way of doing that unless you start to take the steps and grow your courage. And so that's what we talk about at the beginning. Then we have a whole hour where those women just work on their project, because that project becomes evidence that, hey, you did something courageous today. You might not see it as courageous, but you need to start looking at it as evidence that you can do something. You did this, you finished it, and now you can move forward and do the next thing. So
when did you put the group in place, Bernice?
It's been a year. Yeah.
Okay, so this is every a fairly recent phenomenon.
Yes. And it came out well because actually, I think I left my paid job about 3 years ago. And yeah, about
so
3.
So this thing that you're doing right now, this is it for you. This is like this is
my legacy.
This is but it's also courage. It's your work put into practice, actually, right?
So, yeah, and it takes so much courage every day.
Yeah, what a wonderful thing. Okay, so did we finish the 10 books?
No, I'm on. Okay, I have.
So you got 3 books, and you've got your framework. That's part of that. So you've got your umbrella, and you've got your framework, and then we started this group. Bernice, it sounds like you kind of created the environment that maybe you were seeking in the very beginning, with this group of ladies and women coming together, working toward and forging toward this goal, using courage, putting these tools in place. Maybe that one thing that wasn't there for you when you were having to navigate it, which put you in the position of being able to facilitate the learning of others, being able to do that same thing, but maybe in a shorter time span, right? So
yeah. And I think you're absolutely right,
Yeah.
because everything that I pass on to other women is something I'm going through myself and something I have been through
I was
myself.
gonna say sometimes the things that we build are the things we long for, right? So quite
Yeah.
often, like even when you started taking the relationship coaching way back in the day, because you were hungry
Yes.
for something that was healthy and loving and kind and good, all of those things, right? So
Yes. And
yeah.
the fact that what is really beautiful about life is when we start moving towards something we really want, the steps appear, like you find them one at a time. And if you have the courage, if you're brave enough to take that step, the next one shows up and then the next one shows up. And you become so much more wise by taking those steps. And even sometimes the goal changes, right? Because
Mhm.
I kind of have left the idea behind that the goal is is that you need to reach the goal even. I really believe it's the person you're becoming while you're reaching the goal that matters the most.
The
Because
journey itself.
yeah,
Mhm.
character is the most important thing that you grow in your life. And
Mhm.
when you get to that place where you're on your deathbed, I think that you're going to look back and be proud of the person you were. At least I hope. And I encourage people to think about that. Who do you want to be?
Yeah, it's such a shame that we don't approach some of the hard things for such little reasons. Oh,
Yeah.
and I'm just thinking of this now, like you want to do something big or hard or difficult, go somewhere, apologize even, make amends with people of the past,
Yeah.
things that you just want to do, but you're afraid because of whatever reason. Fill in the blank. I'm afraid of looking silly. I'm afraid of being embarrassed. But when you're on your death, you're leaving this world. Like it's like,
Yeah.
oh, what a shame. What a
Yeah.
shame that I let that one little thing stop me from, and maybe I wouldn't have accomplished the big thing. Maybe it would have never happened, but at least I would have tried. And that could have brought me to somewhere else that I should have been anyways, right? In that failure. So being comfortable and being able to live with the failure as not a failure, but as just a different direction,
Yeah.
you know? And we miss out on so much. I find this as I'm getting older. Like, why would you let, I don't know, not looking perfect or not that I ever look perfect pretty soon, but like being embarrassed. Like I think the risk of embarrassment is so huge
Yeah.
for people, right? Like what if what's
Shame.
that saying? But what if you fly? Or like I forget what the saying is, but what if it's good? What if it takes off? Like, but you'll never know unless you take that first step. So this is the thing that you've been facilitating for about a year now. So
Yeah.
tell me about the environment. Tell me, are there relationships being forged? How are women walking away from this? What are some of the fabulous things that are happening?
Well, I have a lot of the same women that came in soon after I started this, still coming because they say it's a thing they put into their calendar every other week because for one thing they get something done, like they bring
Like an
something that is really
accountability
top
factor.
of mind, they
Yeah.
get it done, but also because they find a reason to keep going. It's kind of what you were just saying. We get stopped by so many things, and fear is often at the bottom of it. Oh, this is never going to work, or this is too much work, or I don't have the capacity to do this, or what was I thinking? All of those things get in the way of us doing the things we really most want to accomplish in life. And so by coming into this group, and actually now I have another tier to that group, which I call the Tiny Brave Way, which will be the name of my signature book because they're taking tiny brave steps, right? But there I'm working deeper with women now in a very small group and helping them to realize that courage is something that comes after you take a step. And so they're looking at their business, their life goal, the thing that they want the most. And every other week we are reinforcing the fact that fear is always going to be there. I have this formula called ACT, because you have to take action. You have to acknowledge the fear, and then you have to decide, who are you going to be? Who do you want to be? What's your identity here? So they are choosing their identity, and then they're taking a step from that identity. So, I am seeing them relax into being who they are. I am seeing them face scary situations like making offers or raising their prices, or actually even stopping other people telling them what to do, like coming
putting
into
up
that.
boundaries where they need to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And being themselves, realizing what it is they want and who they really want to be, and actually who they are. Because when it comes right down to it, it's not just about what you want. It's actually the most comfortable place to live is as yourself and as you are meant to be. So you find that those deep qualities inside that are your gifts, and you learn to be okay with them and not want somebody else's gifts. You just have your own. And so, that's where you start to really practice that, being yourself and taking that forward.
Yeah. Have you ever had an instance where someone's decided, so you have the group and everyone's got their plan of the big thing that they want to do and accomplish? Have you ever had an experience where together in that journey, you find out, oh, this maybe wasn't for me, and like they kind of fall into what they thought it was going to be, like what we said before, it's the journey itself, right? So you thought you were after this one thing when really you should have been here, or this is really what you thought in the beginning you wanted to be a coach. You thought that you wanted to coach relationships, and in a roundabout way you are, but it's in a much different approach than what you originally thought. And you would have never known unless you grew into that. And I think all of us are doing that same thing. And I think that's what life is for. I think that's the only reason why we live in a sense, is to figure that out. And it might take until you're 70, 80, 90. You might turn the leaf over when you're 49. Nobody knows. Heck, if you can do it at 20, oh, wonderful. But then what are you going to do for the rest of your life? You got to be the rest of your life, you got to act perfect, right? Because you found your thing. But then you just move on. Then you just move on to the next thing. So you're never going to know. We are never going to be at that state. So why not?
Yeah.
Why not try?
Yeah.
Why give up that opportunity toward to embarrassment, or the threat of embarrassment, possible embarrassment, or
humiliation.
Humiliation is the thing. Yes.
That failure thing, what we label as failure, because, we have that definition in our mind.
But we don't care about failure unless other people see it. Think about when you're dancing. You don't care that you make the wrong moves. You don't care that you fell down on the floor. You only care if you fell if somebody saw you fall, right?
Yeah, true.
Like if you think about failure in that sense, right? We don't care about failing privately as long as we learn from it. Oh, that will never happen again. But it's the public failure. It's the public falling. It's the public disgrace. It's the public, embarrassment or shame. It's that really that people are so fearful of.
Yes, and I agree with you to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But I also think there is this place where we beat ourselves up because when we have our own personal goals, or we want to get to a certain place and we never seem to be able to get there, I think that there is this place where it doesn't matter if nobody else knows that. That's
Yes.
where we lose our self-esteem.
Exactly. And that's why I said, like, if you've fallen and you get up
Yeah.
and nobody sees it, then you're good. But it's if you don't learn from that mistake
Yeah.
and you keep making there's where the real shame comes in. The internal shame is when you keep making the same mistake, even though you know better, right? And
That's right.
that's what we all have to work to get over, right?
Yes, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Because if you don't, I get it's like what you said. If you if you don't take care of that one thing, like when you're on your deathbed, you're going to look back and say, I, I wonder if I could have. I I wonder if I had done that, if I really could have, made it to that goal or done that thing that would have meant so much. And I mean, sometimes we run into barriers that can't be crossed and then we have to change the direction.
Yeah.
But it's the trying that brings your self-respect.
Yeah.
It's taking those little steps toward that goal and then having the decision, being able to make the decision because you can see it's not going to work out. And that's okay. That doesn't matter. The important thing is that you grew stronger, you became braver as you were taking the steps forward. The
Yeah.
destination really doesn't matter.
And you don't even know if you're supposed to go right or left until you get to that wall,
Yeah,
right? So why
yeah.
keep right? So it's useful to discover that. That's a wonderful thing that you're doing. I think that's great. So you've got this group going. Tell us about how your book is shaping up.
Well, yeah, there's I knew writing was hard,
Yeah.
but I didn't know it was as hard as it is. And my first three were challenging. Of course, you always get into that messy middle where you don't know where you are. It's kind of like, why am I writing this again? or what did I want to say? And it takes like, a million revisions and so much editing.
Yes.
So I'm in that messy middle part of this book. I really do want to have my rough draft completed by the end of June.
Yeah.
So, I'm hoping to have it published out there, but I haven't really used a formal editor before, but this time I'm going to because it's important and I really do want to do a good job.
How are you publishing, Bernice? Are you self-publishing? Did you find a
Yeah,
publisher? How? Yeah.
self-publishing on
Yeah.
Amazon. My book covers are all going to probably change once I have the signature book written. They will still remain under that book
Mhm.
because it's the same what I have written in those, and my courage framework is in all three books. So I'm just expanding on that now and really making it deeper.
Yeah.
And I love the way the book's coming out because I am writing it half as an allegory. So it's a story of the midlife woman and the things that she encounters, and then my comments on the story as we go. So it's quite unique in that
Yeah.
way.
Bernice, I
Yeah.
think you're a very good storyteller. I've also listened to, you've got a great podcast out
Hmm.
as well.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Well, it comes out of this whole idea of courage, right? I
Yeah.
initially began to interview women because I wanted to find out how are they facing the hard things in
Mhm.
life. And all of us need to hear those stories. I wanted to use those stories in my books, in my social media, all of that, because we learn from each other.
Mhm.
And when we know somebody else has gone through this tough thing and they made it through and they learned something in the end, we can all learn so much about that. So then I thought, what am I going to do with these interviews? And then I came up with the idea, why don't I just turn them into stories
Yes.
and make them like a narrated journey that illustrates my courage framework and shows how you get through the tough stuff.
Yeah.
And I have been enjoying it so much, just talking to women and
Yes, you should
finding
be
out.
very proud of it. It's the narration part of the storytelling is quite impressive. So it's not just the
"Hmm,
interview, it's your narration going into those
oh,
things
thank
and weaving
you."
in and out of those stories. So I appreciate it. And
Hmm.
I think people who tune in will as well. So
Well, I'm
congratulations on that, Bernice.
thank you. Thank you. And it really is a joy of my life
Yeah.
because connecting with all of those women and so many different hard things that they choose to bring. It's amazing the variety of life that is around us and all the situations. And then other women listening can find the story that they relate to the most, I hope, and then be able to see how that person got through and maybe get some ideas for how they can get through their hard thing as well.
Do you ever have moments of discouragement?
Yeah, lots. But
Yeah.
this is the beauty. I mean, I I never give up.
Mhm.
And I don't give up now because I think I have learned so much about the role that fear plays in our lives. That fear is an advisor. It's not something to be scared of. It sounds odd, but really fear, and I've shrunk him down to this little dragon type guy that I named Fred. And so I see him as that little guy that's saying, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And, so frantic. And I say, go over there in the corner and eat a cookie.
Eat the cookie. So
Because,
I was gonna double check. It is Fred that's in the corner eating the cookie.
yes. And because I need to make the decision. And, just having this whole perspective, and asking myself, who do I want to be here? I want to be somebody who doesn't give up. And so I am now learning to just go on and take the steps, even though I feel afraid. And I can't believe how that helps me to move forward in my life. Still not perfect and still face all the, normal feelings that we all do. Have to have pep talks. Actually, I have a journal with AI. AI gives me pep talks,
Is that
a
right?
lot. Yeah. So, I mean, that's life. That
Yes.
is just the way life is. And you have to find the way to keep going no matter if you're afraid or not.
So, we've been talking for a bit. What haven't I shared that people should know about you?
I think you've pretty much covered all of it. Perhaps the one thing is my AI tool. I have an AI that I developed. It's
Tell us more.
uh, called the Tiny Brave Steps Generator. So I set that up so women, and my philosophy is in that generator. It's trained to answer like I would in lots of ways, but it also goes much broader than that. But they can just go put in there, it's at tinybravesteps.com. They can talk to it as if they're telling it, their problems or what they're afraid of or, where they're stuck. And it will help them come up with a tiny brave step, actually 3 tiny brave steps that they can take to help them keep moving forward, because that's the biggest thing.
So it provides prompts,
Yeah.
if you will. Okay, interesting.
It's like a conversation. You go there, you just start the conversation. You say, I'm feeling really distressed over this thing that's happening right now, and I don't know what to do. Then it will say, well, tell me more, like, tell me what's going on and let's work this through. And so then it will lead you through a conversation. And in the end, it will say, are you ready for a step that you could take? And you can decide, no, I want to keep talking, or yeah, I'm ready for a step. And it gives you a 90-second step usually to start with, something you can put on a sticky note, some way you can just get a different perspective. And then it'll give you 2 5-minute steps usually that will help you to just simple things you can do that will move you forward and keep you going.
How long has this been running, Bernice?
I think I developed that probably about 8 months ago or so.
How's it been?
Yeah.
What's the feedback been so far?
Well, people really like it. I've used it in my workshops that I've held with
Okay.
women. I use it in my groups, and they really love it. Like they say it is really helpful, and it really has helped them to think it through. There are limitations to it that I'm looking at because I mean, ChatGPT and all of the AIs have come so far
Yeah.
since I developed this. But the difference with this is that it is infused with my philosophy and my courage framework. So, once they
So
know,
this is a model that you've taught, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Because AI, it's not something that you want to use, to solve if you need some help from a therapist or that sort of thing. But it sure is good in the everyday moment.
Mm. So what are you hopeful the most for the future? We talked a little, AI's definitely futuristic. What are you hopeful for most for us humans?
Yeah, that's a big question, isn't it?
Within your purview, within the thing that you do.
I want, I mean, really what all I work towards every day is helping women to come to stop letting other people tell them who they are, to help women truly embrace the courage so that 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 they can find by taking tiny steps because they have something to do in this life. They have an influence to exert. They have a purpose to live. And I fully believe every woman is built in a way that allows her to influence in a certain way, even if it's just a small circle. She has a way to be in the world that can change other women. And I think that's probably, if I am able to leave this life knowing that I did all I could to help women find their courage, then that is my life well lived.
Oh, that's a great note to end on. Bernice, thank you so much for your time. Where can we find out all the information on your books, your website? Where's the best place to look?
I think tinybravesteps.com is the place to go. And my books are on Amazon if you want to look me up there, there.
I will have links in our show notes as well. Thank you so much, Bernice.
Yes, this has been wonderful, Nancy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know, it's tea. You're not supposed to drink tea at night, they say, with the caffeine. It is not caffeine-free. It's regular tea. But it's a tradition. My grandmother always made me tea, and it's just something that I do. And it doesn't matter that it's late at night here on Late Talks on Air. That was Bernice McDonald hailing to us from Grand Prairie, Alberta, Canada. Bernice is a life strategist coach and the creator of the Tiny Brave Steps methodology, a practical, compassionate way of helping women move forward even when fear is present. I would say especially when fear is present. Sometimes we're drawn to build things that don't exist. We have a need for something, and I've been thinking about this with Bernice. Wherever she was in Grand Prairie, Alberta, the thing that she needed wasn't there, so she built it. And now that she's built it, it's available to share with other women. And that's the way it goes. Life changes are hard. Big life changes are hard. So two takeaways from this interview. I think the main takeaway here is that you don't have to do it alone, ever. Look around. Those resources are there for you. And that we can build courage by taking tiny steps with intention. That's it for our show this week. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today here on Late Talks on Air. I'd like to thank today's special guest, Bernice McDonald. You can learn more about Bernice and the framework she's built at tinybravesteps.com. And as well, Bernice has her own storytelling podcast, also titled Tiny Brave Steps, Real Women, Real Fear, and Real Courage Stories. I'll include everything in my show notes. If you have any questions or comments, as always, come visit me at latetalksonair.org, and you can reach out to me through the contact page. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I'm your host, Nancy Duffy, signing off. Until next time, have a great night, everyone.